This wasn't just a birthday, it was a public unraveling hiding behind balloons, forced laughter, and a silence so loud it echoed across the entire internet because while Meghan Markle flooded the world with proof that she was thriving, the one place that mattered most responded with absolutely nothing. Meghan Markle turned 45 and tried to turn that number into a spectacle balloons rising. Desserts layered, flowers arranged, carefully curated glimpses of joy exploding across screens as if she could manufacture celebration by sheer volume alone. But Buckingham Palace answered with something far colder than criticism. Silence. No acknowledgement. No gesture. No signal that the day even existed. And the deeper you look into that silence, the more unsettling it becomes. Because silence is never empty, it is deliberate, it is chosen, and it says more than words ever could. So what happens when one side shouts louder and louder and the other refuses to speak at all? Nothing. Not a single birthday post. Not a carefully staged royal photograph. Not even a restrained diplomatic sentence from King Charles. No polite nod from William and Catherine. No recognition that the Duchess of Sussex had reached a milestone. And that absence didn't feel like protocol, it felt like erasure. A vacuum where acknowledgement should have been, and Meghan Markle was left trying to fill it with content. Image after image, post after post, as if visibility could replace validation. The palace didn't attack Meghan Markle. That would have been easier to spin, easier to respond to. Instead, it did something far more devastating. It behaved as though Meghan Markle simply wasn't part of the story anymore. And suddenly, every smiling photo, every bright caption, every burst of curated happiness started to feel louder, desperate even, because the more Meghan Markle showed the world how perfect everything was, the more that silence stretched behind her like a shadow that refused to disappear. This was supposed to be a victory lap, a statement year, a moment where Meghan Markle could stand tall, look back at everything, and present herself as completely fulfilled, completely unshaken. But instead, something else slipped through the cracks, a sense that the celebration was being performed rather than lived, that the joy was assembled piece by piece, like a set built just for the camera. And the question began creeping in quietly at first. If everything is so perfect, why does it need to be proven this hard? Because even before the candles were metaphorically lit, the first blow had already landed. The royal account stayed silent, completely silent. Meghan Markle's name didn't appear. Her image didn't appear. The institution tied to her title offered absolutely nothing. And while some rushed to explain it away, protocol, policy, technicalities, the emotional impact didn't follow those rules. Because rules don't soften rejection. They don't disguise absence, and they definitely don't stop the public from noticing when someone is being left out. So Meghan Markle did what Meghan Markle does best. She took control of the narrative, or at least she tried to. The cameras turned on. The content began to roll. Because if the palace wouldn't validate the moment, then the moment would be built elsewhere, bigger, brighter, louder, a spectacle that couldn't be ignored, a life that looked too full to question. And suddenly, there she was, Meghan Markle in a black swimsuit, frozen midair, leaping into a swimming pool beside birthday balloons, a snapshot designed to scream freedom, confidence, joy, a moment that looked spontaneous but landed like a statement. And people watched closely because it wasn't just a jump into a pool, it was a declaration, a message wrapped in imagery. Look at me, look at this life, look at how happy everything is. But here's where it starts to fracture, because when happiness is real, it doesn't usually need this much presentation. It doesn't need this many angles, this many edits, this many carefully timed releases. Then came the dancing. Meghan Markle moving through a Montecito kitchen, laughter spilling out, dogs wandering in the background, everything casual, everything relaxed at least on the surface. No palace balcony, no formal portrait, no rigid royal rules, just movement, warmth, and what was meant to feel like authenticity. But the more it was watched, the more it began to feel like something else entirely. Not a glimpse into real life, but a performance designed to look like one. And the questions sharpened. Why show this? Why now? Why this specific version of happiness? Because every frame seemed to be answering a question that hadn't been asked out loud yet. Every image was proof of something. The balloons proved playfulness. The kitchen proved comfort. The dogs proved warmth. The flowers proved peace. The dessert proved branding. And suddenly the birthday didn't look like a celebration anymore. It looked like a campaign. and campaigns have objectives. The louder Meghan Markle pushed the image of joy, the more people started looking at what wasn't there. No crowded party, no visible circle of close friends, no chaotic, messy, unmistakably real celebration happening behind the scenes. Just controlled glimpses, just moments that felt contained, almost too contained, like everything existed within the frame and nowhere beyond it. And just when it seemed like Meghan Markle had pushed the spectacle as far as it could go, the celebration took another turn because the birthday didn't just need to look joyful anymore, it needed to sell something. Suddenly, Meghan Markle wasn't just celebrating, Meghan Markle was demonstrating, carefully layering vanilla ice cream, adding as ever raspberry spread, crushed shortbread, more spread, and decorative sprinkles, presenting it all as if this was not just dessert but a signature moment, a lifestyle, a brand extension quietly woven into what was supposed to be a personal day. And the shift was impossible to ignore because this wasn't just a birthday anymore, it was a storefront disguised as a celebration. Every scoop and sprinkle doubling as a message that Meghan Markle's world could be purchased, recreated, consumed, but something didn't sit right, and viewers caught it instantly. In another moment, Meghan Markle appeared holding a plain ice cream cone, simple, unlayered, untouched by the very spread that had just been promoted so heavily. The contrast was small, almost invisible at first glance, but once noticed, it became impossible to ignore. Why build a dessert for the camera that Meghan Markle didn't even seem to choose in real life? Why sell a version of indulgence that didn't match the one being casually enjoyed? And just like that, a simple birthday treat turned into a question about authenticity, about whether the image being presented was ever meant to reflect reality at all. Then the circle tightened even further, because Meghan Markle's own company stepped in, publishing a tribute that celebrated Meghan Markle, turning the brand into both creator and admirer. A closed loop where Meghan Markle praised Meghan Markle through a corporate voice that was expected to feel spontaneous. And that loop revealed something deeper, something more unsettling. Because when the loudest applause comes from something you built yourself, what does that say about the silence everywhere else? And just as the performance reached its peak, another crack appeared. A soft garden video, Meghan Markle moving through flowers, selecting stems, arranging them into a bouquet, presenting a calm domestic version of life that felt slower, more grounded, more real. At least that was the intention, because almost immediately comparisons began to surface, pointing toward influencer Nara Smith, whose own content carried strikingly similar visuals, movements, pacing. The resemblance wasn't about flowers themselves, it was about the language of the imagery, the timing, the presentation, the feeling that this version of Meghan Markle had been assembled rather than discovered. And suddenly, the birthday wasn't just being watched, it was being analyzed, frame by frame, detail by detail, as if every moment contained a clue. Because this wasn't happening in isolation. The comparisons had been building, quietly stacking over time. Meghan Markle measured against Martha Stewart, Gwyneth Paltrow, Pamela Anderson, each new identity layered on top of the last, each new version raising the same question: where does the real version begin? And by the time the birthday content reached its most recognizable image, the tension had already been set. The pool photograph. Meghan Markle mid-air, suspended above the water, balloons floating nearby, a picture designed to capture freedom, movement, celebration, but within moments, another image surfaced: Princess Diana in a strikingly similar pose. The same airborne motion, the same visual energy, the same kind of moment frozen in time. And just like that, the image stopped belonging entirely to Meghan Markle. It became a comparison, a debate, a continuation of a pattern that many had already started to notice. Because it wasn't just about one photograph, it was about timing, about accumulation, about how the garden video followed the dessert video, which followed the dancing, which followed the silence from the palace. All of it stacking together until the entire celebration began to feel less like a moment and more like a constructed narrative that couldn't quite hold its own weight. And in that moment, something shifted, because the story Meghan Markle had tried to tell of confidence, of independence, of joy was no longer the only story being seen. The palace had said nothing, and yet somehow that silence had shaped everything. Because while Meghan Markle filled the space with images, products, performances, and proof of happiness, the absence from King Charles, the absence from William and Catherine, the absence from the institution itself lingered over every frame, quietly redefining what the audience was watching. It wasn't just a birthday anymore. It was a contrast, a divide, a moment where one side spoke endlessly and the other didn't need to speak at all. And that's where the final shift happened, the one that couldn't be edited or reframed. Because by the end of it, despite all the effort, all the content, all the attempts to control the narrative, the conversation wasn't centered on Meghan Markle's celebration anymore. It had shifted, settled somewhere else entirely. Back to Princess Diana, back to comparisons, back to questions about identity, authenticity, and intention. Meghan Markle had tried to make the day about Meghan Markle, but the louder the celebration became, the clearer something else emerged beneath it, a pattern that refused to stay hidden, a tension that refused to resolve, and a silence that refused to be filled.